Hello, friends. Welcome back to Shattered Ceilings podcast. Today in episode 6, we are discussing all things birth order. Jump right into the conversation with us as we interview our first ever guests, my 2 older sisters, and ask them about their experience in their birth order. But I'm going to let my sisters introduce themselves and tell us their birth order.
Hi, I'm Alina Mollenhour, and I am firstborn.
Yes, firstborn. Do you want to say anything else about yourself?
I'm a mom of 6 kids. I have 4 of my own and then 2 bonus daughters.
Super mom.
Aww. And my name is Lily, and I am the second child to 4 sisters, and I just have 1 son.
Yes. And then Adriana, as you guys know, first episode, big family.
Yeah, big family. I'm the 3rd oldest out of 14, which makes me still a middle child. But I still feel like an older sister since I have like a lot of younger brothers and all of that.
Which I think, like I said, your experience is going to be really cool just to see how like family dynamics from a bigger family like play into how your personality develops and stuff like that. So let's just go right into it, guys. We're going to talk about all the different birth orders, specifically what we have here at the table. I'm going to link all the resources down in the description because I want today's episode to like not be so scripted, but I want it to more just be kind of like a little bit educational, but more getting to know us. And then if you guys want like more resources, we're going to link it in the description. So the older sister of sisters, let's start with you, Anka. You're the older sister of sisters, and the book actually says, you're going to think this is funny, the queen of the Amazon. That's what they're called. They are responsible, motherly, not necessarily nurturing, according to the book, but motherly. The mom of the friend group, they are put together. I kind of think of like the character in Encanto, the older sister who like sings the song that like all the weight is on her shoulders. Getting really accurate here, guys.
Wait, the queen of the Amazon, is that like shopping or the Amazon River?
The Amazon River.
Oh, okay.
I thought the Amazon was a forest.
Amazon shopping too, it could be. Lily, we need to have you back on more episodes.
Oh, thank you.
So I don't know. I think this is really accurate so far for Anka. And then one thing that I think is interesting, if you look at family dynamics, sometimes older sisters tend to be relied on more than older brothers. And I want to ask you, Anka, because your firstborn is a son. So do you feel like that's accurate? Do you feel like you're relied on more?
That is so true. That description of firstborn sounds like me to a T. It's actually shocking.
Isn't it crazy?
It is. I guess it's just a natural thing to do as a firstborn, just like be a leader and act like a mom and
mothering.
Just take charge. Yeah, and I do. My son is a firstborn of out of my first 4 kids, and I definitely do not rely on him as much as I do on my oldest daughter, which is the second child.
Isn't that so interesting?
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting when I read that. So yeah, like I said, I think it's really accurate. Going on to middle sister of sisters, which is you, which is you, Lily, and once again, really accurate. Middle sister of sisters is a mediator, a peacemaker, go with the flow, not very opinionated. And I think that's your personality, Lily.
Yeah, it pretty much sums it up.
And then it's sometimes middle sister of sisters or middle sister in really any family can be something called a switch hitter, which basically means it's not bad.
Oh, okay.
Switch hitter means that you can take on the role of an older sibling with your younger ones, but then you can also be like having characteristics of a younger sibling. I think you're like that because sometimes you are taking on like characteristics of an older sibling with like Yunella and Emma, but then obviously Anka's older than you. Do you feel like you were the middle child? Do you feel like more pressure fell on Anka as the oldest?
All the time.
Really?
Sadaka.
Wow, interesting.
But we love her and appreciate her for that.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And that is totally, I think you're the buffer in our family. Because I think you, like being the mediator, we all know that about you, is you need a middle child. That's why sometimes I look at my kids, because I have 2, and I'm like, I think Sienna would be a good middle child.
Mix it up.
I know, mix it up. Like the middle child just, I think, kind of is the buffer in the family a lot of times, like I said. And then Adriana, you're the younger sister of sisters, right? And the older sister of brothers.
Yeah.
Do you have brothers underneath you?
Yeah, I only have 2 older sisters above me, and then I have six
Okay.
brothers.
Right underneath you? Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's, and once again, I mean, so far from what I know from you, I feel like this is so real. This birth order is the girl's girl and the guy's girl, which basically means the fun girl, Bella Hadid, is this birth order.
Oh, that's good to know.
I thought this is kind of funny. They own the world, but they don't run the world.
Oh.
I don't know, because I thought it was interesting. Like, very independent, very driven, ambitious, and creative dynamos.
Yeah.
Which I think that's kind of
I think
too.
those are all compliments.
You
like
sound
awkward.
cooler than me, Adriana.
I know, right?
I think it is having younger brothers. Like you said, like I was always like the older sister that would take them to the gas stations or like be mommy duty and like drop them off. So I feel like I would hang with the guys, but then I would have my sisters and I have like that personality. So when you said the whole like switch role, I'm like, okay, I can see that even with myself.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Like,
okay.
But then also Michelle, which is like, she's only a year apart from me. Growing up, we would always butt heads. And this was also in the book. If technically you're physically bigger than someone older than you just naturally feel like you're older or like you act like it. And growing up, she would always be like, stop acting like you're older than me. And I'm like, well, then start acting like you're older than me.
It's still like that with you guys, huh?
I think the more she got like married younger and she has kids now. So I'm like, okay, she's definitely my older sister. Like there's no competition there. But when you're younger, you just want to be older and like, you think it's cool.
It's interesting how that plays into how your personality develops too.
Yeah.
And there's actually factors that play into this birth order. So a couple things that can switch things up is like your parents' birth order. So like if your parent was the oldest, that can factor into how they parent you and then how you are. Age gap between siblings, which this pertains, I think, to me. So if you have a sibling that's 7 years older, then they have basically no effect on your development because they're so much older. So you're technically a functional only child. How many siblings you have, and then also subsets or groups in families, which I think is like has to do with your family. If you have like groupings, that can also affect your birth order and how your personality develops.
So you have like the older, the middle, the younger. That's why I'm older.
In the older group of the older. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So for me, I am technically, according to this, I'm a functional only child because my next oldest sibling, Emma, is 8 years older than me, which is outside of that 5 to 7 year gap, which basically means that I didn't have any siblings that played a role on my development, which I think is very accurate because I don't know if you guys know, but we shared the same dad, but not the same mom. So that's why I came so late in the timeline. But so you guys are not a lot older than me. How many years?
14.
Older? Are you 14 years older? Oh my gosh. 14, 13, right?
12.
14, 12, and then Yanela is 10 and Emma's 8. So you guys were close, and then I came, 8 years later, which I think is like pretty accurate. And so only children in general, they tend to look up to people as role models more than any other birth order would, which I did that a lot. I think when I was younger, kind of funny, they're 3 musketeers with their parents. I think this is kind of accurate with me just because, like I said, I didn't really have any like childhood experiences of growing up with siblings since, like we'll talk about the history later, but I think I didn't live with you guys after I was 4. If I remember correctly.
Right, because you moved to Tennessee.
I moved, yeah. My mom and I moved to Tennessee and my dad, and then you guys were in Arizona. And then when I moved back, you guys were like married, right?
Yeah.
You were, but Lily wasn't, but almost. Right?
I was having the time of my life.
Middle child.
And even that, like such a big age gap, obviously different seasons in life.
Right.
So every time we would vacation, it was just like me and my parents. So kind of that, like 3 musketeers. And you have an action only child, Lily.
I do.
So do you feel like that's accurate?
I don't know what 3 musketeers mean.
3 musketeers.
It's the chocolate, I know that.
It's based on a movie, right?
That too. Okay. 3 musketeer, like 3 like best friends. You guys are like always together.
Oh, so you're saying that you, mom and dad are that?
We were always together.
Yeah.
Like, on
She was
vacations
little,
and
yeah.
stuff.
So you and your son.
Oh, yeah. He's
thing-
still attached to my hip.
Yeah, another thing they say is only children are friends with their parents. Like, do you feel like that with
I
Justin?
agree, yes.
He talks to you like a friend.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is awesome. I think that's so cool. I don't know, this says they want to be liked and they have a very easygoing personality. I think Justin is easygoing.
Yeah, and I feel like you are too sometimes.
Yeah, and go with the flow. All right, let's not get into that on here. No, I'm kidding. And then also like another interesting thing that I read about in the book by William Kane, how birth order can affect your dating life. And do you guys want to talk about this?
Brother, sure.
What it says about older sister of sisters, and I think this was accurate with Bianca, they're very calculated in dating. They love to be pursued. They want dominant, like they want the man to be dominant. And kind of interesting, it says they're best paired with the male only child. I don't know why science says that, but Tommy's not an only child, right? Is he middle child?
No, he's the youngest.
Really? Oh. Which works out, actually. That was the other thing I read, because the oldest gets to kind of take on like an older role, and then the youngest kind of takes you out of your shell a little bit.
It's true. And then like he always wants me to make all the decisions.
See, that's so
Which I'm like,
interesting. No, but they say it works well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. See that. Technically, James is the youngest out of the family.
Okay, yeah. So
it's just him and Ron. And then I'm still like middle child, but still like the older middle child.
Okay.
So I feel like I kind of have that dynamic of
I see it with you guys for sure, too.
Yeah. I love that you kind of were like, oh, I have to make more of the decisions. And I'm like laughing inside because I'm like, you like, want the guy to make the decisions, but then it's nice that they also trust
like,
you. And they're like,
future?
No, like, you know best too. So.
That's nice. And then middle children, surprise, surprise, birth order doesn't matter to them. So isn't that so accurate for you?
That's very true.
Like, it doesn't really matter. Your husband is the oldest, right, Nelo?
No, middle.
He's not? He's the middle?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So I kind of read that when two middle children get together like that, they take turns being dominant. Like, one is sometimes than the other.
No, because I feel like the middle child, what you described for me, I don't see my husband in that description at all, which is weird. Yeah.
But then that also factors into
ethnicity.
Ethnicity, culture also didn't.
Romanian.
He didn't grow up next to his siblings for a period, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that too, like I didn't.
They did the grandparents, like one of them was in a village, and then the mom's parents was in another village, so his sister grew up there mostly.
So kind of like a male only child, kind of.
Kind of, yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
That's Nalu.
Yeah, isn't that so interesting? Wow, it's crazy accurate.
Yeah.
And then you talked about James being the youngest, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like he is definitely the younger and Ron is the older?
Yes, but I also did read that chapter of when you have two kids, it also not changes the birth order since there's no middle child. So it's more in a sense also like not competing, but you're also like when you have two kids, you kind of treat them the same. So it's not, I don't think he's like such a baby of the family, but I see like some traits of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that with your kids too? I was thinking about it because Abby's the middle. Well, technically,
she's the oldest.
How many
of the
years
girls.
are between Lindsay and Mila?
7.
7 years? Okay, so yeah. Interesting. I don't know. I think it's pretty
Mila's
accurate.
totally that.
The youngest, right?
Of the only child. The one that you were. Like, I was reading her stuff and I was like, wow, that
Isn't it so accurate?
Even though she's the youngest of 4, she's the youngest of... Is it the youngest of youngest?
Yeah.
Because the youngest only child, because
it's that 7-year gap too. Yeah. So really quick now, let's go around the table and kind of talk about like the best thing about that we think about our birth order and the worst thing. I'm going to start with Bianca. What do you think was the best thing about your birth order?
I guess the best thing I would say is just being able to be in control of all my siblings, but then that's also the worst
thing.
It's so weird. They go hand in hand.
Don't you feel like that's your identity, like in a sense?
Yeah, because like you take charge, you always watch out for them and try to protect them. I feel like even now, even though all my sisters are grown up and on their own, I still worry, and then I still try to act like the mom always. I'm like, no, you need to do this, and actually, I just scolded you the other day, huh?
She sure did.
So.
But it's the worst too.
It is the worst too, because also, first of all, when you're the oldest, you take all the punishment. Like, I got blamed for everything, even though I had nothing to do with what Yanela did or what Emma did or stuff. And then not so much with you because of this. I was already out. I was on my own. I was probably already having kids. But one of the worst things I would say is I was the first one to get a job, and so I provided, and then my sister just always took all my stuff. Like I wouldn't mind if my sister borrowed my clothes or shoes or
But then the friends would borrow it.
But then I would see all of their friends wearing my stuff, and I worked really hard. So that was probably the worst thing. But I do love, that I was able to, they say the firstborn, we got the best looks and the brains, right? Because we got the.
Okay. I don't know where you read that. I don't know if that's accurate. It wasn't in this list.
But no, it's nice. I like it, and I guess that explains my personality. I do like to take charge. I don't want to say I'm controlling. I probably used to be. I'm a lot
put together.
Yeah, I don't think you're controlling. No,
but I do like to.
You're a take charge for sure. Yeah, leadership. Lily, what would you say is the best and the worst?
I think I really like the peacemaker. I like being the peacemaker. It makes me feel happy, and
you definitely are.
Gosh, we're so different.
I know. And I forgot what switch hitter was.
Switch hitter is when you can take on older siblings, or you can also sometimes be like.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't want to take on anyone's responsibility. Do you feel like she can do it.
Do you feel like you had any bad experiences as the middle child?
No. Nothing comes to mind.
Typical middle child answer.
I know. Yeah, I'm pretty easygoing.
You are.
And I feel like I think of Justin. Wait, he's not. Never mind. But I think of Max.
Max is.
He's a middle child, and he's
middle child.
Easygoing.
Our nephew. That's so true.
Yeah.
That's all so true. Wow. What would you say, Adriana, for best and worst?
I feel like I relate to both of you guys, kind of being the older, but not the oldest. So, I feel like that also made me more independent, kind of taking the leadership role. And I realized I kind of have control issues when I was planning my wedding and just planning things. I was like, okay, I realize I can't just trust people to do things. I need to take that responsibility. And if something goes wrong, I want to be kind of blamed for, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I kind of wanted the pressure on me, and I feel like I work well under pressure. So I feel like that is a good thing, but then it can also be bad because I can't just turn off my brain and be like, oh, other people are gonna deal with it. It's it's kind of also about boundaries. I realize the people pleasing are always making sure I'm saying yes to everyone because I want to help, but then it's also not good. So I feel like that's the older characteristic of just taking charge, being responsible. If my younger sisters got hurt or something, I felt why was I not watching them? Even though I wasn't the parent, but I was the older one.
It's kind of crazy how that goes on into your future, right? That subconscious always having to watch over.
It's hard to turn that side of my brain off. But I think it's a good thing because you do. I laugh when you said you're mothering but not nurturing, because I come from a big family, so everyone's you're being such a good mom, you're so good with kids, and I'm I don't know if I have that instinct in me, but I guess I'm always around kids, so I have that. But I think a downside of being the older is always being the one to blame. If your parents got mad at the kids, they looked at you first because you're the oldest, you should have been a better role model. But you're still a child and you don't know better. So that was another thing that my dad always said, all your younger siblings are looking up to you. And I was thanks for all that pressure. I don't need that in my life.
I'll try not to do that with Samson.
Yeah, it's hard because
you already do that.
I know. I have to stop.
Yeah, it's pretty natural to do that at the older ones. But then being the middle child, how you're more of a peacemaker and easygoing, it's nice to just take that okay, I'm not really in charge, I'm just the middle child. Sometimes I'm easily neglected, and it's it's kind
easy
of gross. Yeah, you can kind of just sit in the sidelines and you're okay, if I don't do anything, no one will really blame me.
Yeah, that's so true, and you will handle it.
And it's so funny when you said the motherly versus nurturing, or your motherly. So I feel like I'm motherly, but I'm definitely not nurturing. Even with my kids, if somebody got hurt, unless you're bleeding or I'm tough it up. Get up.
But Lily's nurturing, I think.
Oh, Lily is so nurturing. If you ask all the little kids, who's your favorite aunt?
Yeah.
They're going to pick her because she's so peaceful. She plays with them.
Yeah.
She, nothing bothers her, to where I'm I love you guys, but now it's time to clean up, get your stuff together,
So
put it away. It's,
That's
I
so
don't,
funny.
I just take charge and not nurture so much. So.
Yeah, that's also a good thing. My parents still to this day, because we still have younger kids rolling around, and I'm Mom, tell the kids to stop. And she's they don't listen to me. You tell them, they'll listen. And it's true. I'll tell them like, hey, you guys are too loud. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, why are they listening to me and not my mom?
You're confused.
Yeah, so
That's
it's just
funny.
that role.
Okay, and then the last question, or I guess I should share too.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
please.
for me, I don't really have a best thing about my birth order. I guess I kind of do. So I like having, I would say the age gap I think is cool because I can see you guys in different seasons now and I can gain on your experience and like have knowledge, like even going through parenting now and everything, which is cool. But the worst thing is definitely the age gap again. It's the best and the worst because like sometimes my husband Phineas will like talk about all these stories growing up and I'm like, I don't really have like any experiences like that. Obviously there's positive and negative to everything, but that's why I really want and like push for like my kids to kind of be closer in age to have those experiences because that's something that you never get back. Like you can't make that up when you're older. So that is actually, so our next question, and this one anybody can answer it if you guys feel comfortable. What would you say was like the hardest thing like related to your birth order, like how your parents parented you? So do you feel like your birth order played a role in how your parents parented you? And like how was that difficult or...
Oh, I think so for sure, because being the first child, they're all so careful and like when you're little, you know, they overdo it because they don't know any better. It's, you know,
So true.
you're their only child. But then after you start having siblings, you know, with the second one, they're not as strict. They're not as, but then the responsibility, like everything was on me. Like if Lily screwed up or if, you know, or it was my fault because I was the oldest and I should have watched him. I should have known better. I shouldn't allow it. I should have
Maybe
been
that's
an
why
example.
as an adult you become so like tight, like hard, not hard on yourself, but you have to like constantly be proving, you know,
Right.
because when you were younger,
they
you were
had that
held responsible.
expectation of us. So it's true. And then like even with the stuff that I would be allowed to wear or my curfew was like 9 p.m. at 18 to where Stephanie
By
was,
the time they get to the fifth kid, that's
there's
it.
zero
Oh,
zero
yeah.
curfew, zero rules. They can wear whatever they want.
Yeah.
You know, it's so crazy. So yeah, that pressure as the first child is really, it's tough.
This is a good lesson for me with Samson for sure. Especially because he's a boy and like first male, it's I think easier to expect more from him, but that's true. And then another thing I wanted to mention, so accurate, like punishment, like you said, like you guys were like physically disciplined by dad, like you were spanked, and then me, like dad never put his hand on me. Like by the time they get to the fifth, it's like, I don't know, maybe they just get, you know,
well, and maybe they
older
just got used to like the culture here. You know, when I first came, I was born in Romania, and so things were a lot different back then to where here, you know, I see a huge change in dad just because he's not as strict or as like crazy rules or even ideas that he had back in Romania. He's more like he's accustomed to American ways.
Yeah,
it took him a lot of years to finally see differently. Relax.
Because he's so tight.
Does anybody else want to play into that question?
Again, I feel like I agree with you. Like what you say, I like resonate with so much. Again, I come from a big family, so my youngest sister is 6 years old. So she's like still.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So there's 21 years between you guys.
Oh, yeah, that's good math.
That's like a whole adult.
Yeah. No, when I go out with her, everyone's like, your daughter's so cute. I'm like,
She
she's my
even looks
sister.
exactly like you too.
Yeah, but I see how my parents obviously treat her, or just like the younger like section of the kids, and I'm like, again, we got spanked growing up.
So different.
By then, I think either my parents are just tired, or they realize like, okay, maybe we should have it's not working, or we should have done that. So one thing that comes to mind. Last year they went to like Cabo and the kids were getting face painting. And I have flashbacks of me as a kid wanting to get face painting and my parents were like, no, that's like makeup, that's like tattoos, like no. And I see my like sister Diamond with like a cute butterfly, like her whole face was painted like a mermaid, and my dad's like, look how cute she is, and he's taking photos, and I was like low-key jealous. I was like, I wish like how would my childhood have been if I was the youngest. And my parents were not as strict, so I love it because she's like wild and carefree, and she's just the youngest and gets along with everyone. I'm like, she has no care in the world. Like, she's just a little girl, and everyone loves her. And like, we'll see how that, like, again, everyone turns out differently. But I feel like I appreciate the babies of the family because they're raised with like different parents, and I think that's crazy. There's 14 of us. We all have such different personalities, and I'm like, how did we turn out with the same parents?
Right.
Completely different personalities. So.
That's so true.
Yeah, it's cool to think about, but it's very like funny to see how everyone ends up. And I think it is because of the birth order.
I think it has a lot to do with it too. And then, so one more thing I wanted to talk about, like kind of as we wrap up the episode, is the dynamic of blended families. And I kind of wanted to bring this up because it applies to us. So I mentioned earlier, we are a blended family. We, like I said, have the same dad but different moms. And I think that played so much into even birth order because, like I said, I was born later, but also into like how our relationships were fostered. I think like in immigrant communities, blended families are, one, looked down upon, two, not understood, like people don't understand them, and then three, like you just, even the step parents themselves, maybe they just don't know. There's no rule book for anything, but I also think that they just don't know how to like facilitate and like deal with a blended family. So Anka, like if you want to share, since you're in a blended family, like what do you feel like you relate at all to like now being a step parent and like looking back, do you feel like you relate to anything? And then also like what do you feel like you've done differently than like what our parents did maybe in a blended family?
So yeah, I mean, I'm grateful, I guess, for the experience of being in a blended family, because who would have thought that years and years down the road, that's what would happen to me. Yeah, so was it different? Yeah, I feel like sometimes, even though you love your children, there's still that separation of blood child and stepchild, unfortunately. Because I experienced it with myself. I love my bonus daughters, my stepdaughters so much. And it's funny because my kids think I love them more than I love my own kids because I feel like I'm more harsh on my own kids, right? Because I expect better, and I feel like even if I yell at them or discipline them, they'll forgive me an hour later. So I'm really gentle with my stepkids.
Maybe also because of your experience as a stepchild with your own stepmother. You tried to go in the opposite direction.
Exactly. So she was really harsh on us, I feel like, and especially me being the oldest. And so I told myself that is not how I'm going to do, or I'm going to be. I'm going to make sure that if I do ever have stepkids, I'm going to love them, or at least make them feel like they're loved equally every time. So that's what I try to do with my family now. Like if I buy one daughter something, I try to buy my other daughters, especially my bonus daughters, or include them in, because I want them to feel that love and importance. It's hard on a child when they have to do that and live separately from mom and dad, but I try to make it as comfortable as possible.
Especially because you came into their life later on in their life.
Right.
So you had to kind of work over time to establish that relationship.
Right, and honestly, the only thing that helped me was just being kind and loving and just being there for them,
I think it's so cool to see like how between one generation, obviously our parents and now you, how much you've realized seeing, growing up, like you said, in a blended family, and not only that, but like changing things, practicing it. Right. And I wish and I hope we're going to have actually an episode on blended families, because I think it's like so important.
Do you think it's still looked down upon right now? Or do you think it's mostly in the Romanian community?
I'm laughing because, and I can say this because I know my sister's not like ashamed how most Romanians think. My sister has a stepson. Yeah, has a stepson. And when she first found out, everyone was like talking about it behind her back.
You'd be shocked.
I am shocked.
Actually, she kind of felt uncomfortable because she's like, let alone I'm learning how to be a stepmom. Now people aren't talking. I mean,
I knew that back in the days it was, but I'm shocked to hear that it's still happening.
I'm sure Romanian community, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's not frowned upon in today's world.
I know, it's very normal.
But in immigrant communities, it is for sure. First time I met Michelle, that's actually one of the first things we kind of bonded or clicked on, because somehow the discussion came up, and then I was talking to her, and truly, if you're not like part of a blended family, you don't understand. Like you can say I understand, you don't understand. Like nobody. And at the same time, like Phineas, for example, my husband does not understand my experience at all of being in a blended family. So I definitely think conversations need to be had, and like people need to educate themselves. And I'm like so glad and proud of you for like going the opposite direction and like making such amazing changes, because I mean, it's not something you grew up with, so I think it's really cool that you do that. So does anybody have anything else they want to add before we wrap up today's episode?
I feel like now that I'm thinking about Michelle's situation, because I give her props, I'm like, I can't imagine being a mom and then a stepmom, and then they share custody half, so he's only here half the year in a sense, or like in the summertime. And it's kind of like you don't want to be as harsh because you don't want to be that mean stepmom, but then you're also like, you can't not discipline also to find your family.
Well, and honestly, what I found out when I first got married to my husband, I was like, hey, I want you to love my kids like your own. So you do the discipline. You do everything that you would do to your own. And I found out that was a huge mistake because my kids, when I got remarried, they're already teenagers. So, maybe it would have been different if Tommy was there from the beginning or even at like age of 3, 4, how Mila was. But, and so I learned that the hard way. I thought, oh, it's okay to do that. Because it'll show them that you love them. It shows me that you love them and you care for them if you discipline them and treat them the same. And then I found out to be a huge disadvantage because then my kids started disliking him at times. It's like, well, not that they necessarily said, who is he to tell us what to do? Because he's still stepdad. He provides for you. You live under his roof. But they had that mentality, they had that attitude. Yeah. And so
that's a good nugget that you just mentioned.
It's so now, we switched it around to where if someone's in trouble or something needs addressed, he lets me address it with my kids. And then if I'm mad at one of the girls, I let him address it with the girls. Because again, mom can be tough, but then, they'll forgive me an hour later, or not even. Sometimes you hug it out, you make up.
Kind of like with in-laws, how you say, like, you talk to your parents, I'll talk to mine. And one thing I want to ask, because growing up, our dad was over the road a lot, and you guys a lot were with my mom, which is your stepmom. Do you feel sometimes that you wish dad would have been there to discipline instead of the stepmom, instead of my mom?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
So isn't that interesting to think of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, when you take that step back, I think
it's a lot more accepting, like, if it comes from dad.
For sure, because it's your dad. Like you said, you forgive him. Like, whatever happens.
Another thing I just thought of, I don't know how it ties in, or I'm like trying to think of the dynamic. So my mom technically was an only child, which is, I feel like, kind of unheard of.
That's why she wanted so many kids.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, she never understood. She's like, why are you guys arguing? I'm like, Mom, you never had a sibling.
You don't understand.
Yeah, but she technically was an only child, and then her mom remarried, and then by then she, I think, was like in her teens, and then her younger brother, because she ended up having another kid, was I think they're like maybe 10 or even 15 years apart, so she would be like the only child. And then she had like her stepdad, and I feel like her family dynamic, again, I feel like I don't even know as much because we had talked about this before, like Romanians just don't talk about
we
things.
hide it.
So like even to this day, I know she had a stepdad, she had a half brother, and I'm like, okay, wasn't that hard? Like I don't ask questions because I feel awkward. But now like thinking back, I'm like, man, that would have been tough of her being the only daughter with like a single mom and then getting remarried. And then what if her stepdad did start like punishing or acting the father role when you're a teenager? It is like a weird transition of like,
for sure,
not like who's this random guy in my life now, but it's like, okay, you weren't here at all, and now I'm a teenager and now you're telling me what to do. So I feel like it's just weird to know my mom grew up like that, but then again never talks about it.
So different. It's like a different world for you. Yeah. And then also when the other parent factors into that too. You can go so into depth, I feel like, with this. But, so yeah, guys, anybody else want to add anything before we wrap up today?
No, thank you for having us on your show.
Thank you, guys. I was happy to have you guys. So far, it went well. So we didn't fire anything.
Are we invited back?
Yes, for sure. Please. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope that today's episode was like interesting for you guys. We really enjoyed talking about today's subject, and we would really appreciate feedback from you guys. If you have any, you can go ahead and do that in our anonymous suggestion box in our link tree. Please go ahead and subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube so you can keep up with new episodes, and we'll see you guys back next week.